What is the best chess opening for black? How does Alireza Firouzja win with the Sicilian, and why should you continue watching? You will see the new world number 2 play one of the best chess openings with black. What on earth have I done here? By splitting up the board into a king and queen side, you will understand where white and black will create their chances. You will learn how to set up the pieces just like him with this typical cluster. Then you will see Firouzja set up a winning tactic. By the way, that's just in game 1. What you will witness in game 2 is a very fast victory. A perfect bishop here on the long diagonal with a perfect octopus knight on e5. Do you want to play like Alireza Firouzja with the black pieces? Then let's begin. Ayaan Tari has white, Alireza Firouzja has black. Tari 2642 versus Firouzja 2754. This game took place in Norway chess. e4, c5, knight f3, d6, and d4. We have the open Sicilian. Take, knight f6, knight c3, a6. We have the Sicilian Najdorf, one of the best ways to play with the black pieces. Tari now plays a4, and after e5, drops the knight back to f3. Consider the red arrows. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot throughout this video. Pawn, knight, queen, control d5 at the moment only. The knight is controlling d5. This bishop, it could come out to g5 to remove this knight, so then there's more control for white. This bishop can also come out to c4 to control d5 as well. This is the key square both sides are fighting for. And really, white is winning the battle. h6, stopping this bishop coming out. Knight d2, blocking the queen at the moment, but it is coming to c4. Still, white has 3 controlling that square, black has 2, the knight and the bishop. Bishop e7, it looks like the knight can actually come to e3 and then come to d5, but Tari, who is the Norwegian number 2, plays knight d5. Perhaps following up with bishop out to e3 to control b6. It really is about controlling squares. d5 is the main one in the Sicilian, but it looks like white is also going to win the battle for the b6 square. White is winning squares on the queen side. Take, and the bishop drops back to f5, and we saw this position at the beginning. If we consider the left, black has 4 versus 3 on the king side, but if we look at the right, then white has 4 versus 3. Depending on where you've got more pawns is going to be where you will focus on creating chances. a5, controlling b6. Knight d7, control it as well. Bishop e2, castle, queen c7. Bishop e3, white is winning control for a lot of squares on the queen side. Bishop back to h7. Firouzja is getting ready to launch his h-pawn. Rook a3. Nice move. This is a very good move in these kind of positions where it's not obvious that the rook can come to a file in the middle, the d or the e file. So you actually play rook a3, so then you're controlling squares on the 3rd rank. Rook c8, targeting the c2 pawn. King out the way because white might go for f4 later. You're going to move your f pawn f5. 2 key central pawns and f4, typical way to react, and now bishop f6. There's a lot of tension on the e5 pawn, b4. Like I mentioned before, white is going to be the one playing on the queen side. He's got 4 versus 3 on that side. b4 and rook e8. So Firouzja is saying, well, he is not going to have to play on the queen side. Time to switch the rook to the king side, and once again we're going to focus our efforts there. Firouzja understands 4 versus 3 for him. In terms of the pawn structure, that is where his chances are going to be. Queen d2, rook e7, the option to double rooks on the e file. Take by Tari, take. 4 versus 3 has become 3 versus 2. Firouzja's play is still there. Will the knights come off? No. Knight b6 played, and knight g4. I really like this move, knight g4. Because with one move, you've actually got 4 ideas. The knight and the rook attack the bishop. The bishop on f6 controls this blue diagonal. Get your pawns rolling. Look at the red arrows with g5 and f4, and also the rook can double on the e file. One move, 4 ideas. Knight g4 is a great move. Bishop f4. With this move, you also clear the way for the rook to control the 3rd rank once again. Rook e8, attack the bishop, and it can come to f3. Couple of white bishops look good, controlling key squares, but now g5. Black is taking over. The bishop cannot move. It should not move. If it goes to g3, then knight can come in. The rook moves, and then you can even just pick up the pawn on c2, rather than even getting your pawns rolling on the king side. That's why Tarry now takes the knight, take back. The e file belongs to black, but bishop back to e3, defended with the rook on the third. With this move, now white is attacking the bishop, so rook f7, transferring Firouzja's rook to the f file. So he's got control of the e and f file, c4, getting your pawns rolling. You may have seen me mention in a previous video 4 versus 3 for white, but this is the bathtub pawn structure. Time for white to get his play going on the queen side. Depending on where your majority is where your play is gonna be. c4. Pause the video now or let the 5-second timer run. Can you find a brilliant move for black? An absolutely brilliant move, taking advantage of the fact that the king is actually weak on the back. What a shame there's not another rook on the first rank. So can you see the absolutely brilliant move Firouzja now played? The brilliant move is bishop b2. There's no time for white to take it because rook takes rook is mate. Rook come off, after take, mate is still threatened, but there's no good way to stop it because your rook is actually attacked. So what does Tarry go for? Well, it's not actually mate, you see, that's the funny thing, even though I said queen f1 was mate. No, queen takes bishop, check, bishop has to block, you've got to target g2. At the moment you are knight down, and if you saw this far, then congrats. You calculated the same tactical idea that Firouzja got. Got to attack g2, rook e2. There's no good way for the queen to defend g2. So Tarry has to take the rook. Take. And rook e3, queen c2, c5, getting your pawns rolling. But the g2 spot is still weak. The queen attacks it, time to get the bishop in the game with bishop e4. There's only one way to defend it, so rook e3 played and now taking on c5. d6. Tarry doesn't waste time taking. If this capture happens, then h5, d6, h4 is possible, even king f7. Then the king is perfectly in time to stop this pawn rolling, and then h4, h3. Just want to show you the tactical motif. h4, if take, h3, that's the idea. And then g2 crumbles and it's mate. Just want to show you this beautiful line. Whatever white does, it doesn't actually matter. If you take, then you can actually take, and it's a pawn checkmate, which is very rare. Going back to the game, Tarry did not waste time to recapture the pawn. He went d6. Now Firouzja takes the pawn on b4, running it home. d7, queen d2, great move. Not only are you stopping the promotion, you keep an eye on g2 along with the bishop, you also assist this pawn as well. Rook g4, attack the bishop, it drops back, threatening to capture. Tarry now blocks with bishop d4. Has Firouzja messed this game up? No. The bishop blocks the queen from the promotion square, but Firouzja has calculated further than Tarry. He has to grab the pawn to stop promotion, take, and now he just pushes the pawn. By the way, let's consider this. If you've thrown this check, only move is to block. You cannot take this rook. So it's a very nice geometric motif. Unfortunately today it just doesn't work. Knight f6 check, picks up the queen. And the bishop is perfectly in time to stop the pawn. You push, the bishop is in time. So we cannot go for this. So going back a few moves, Firouzja has seen further than Tarry. Take, push. And there's no good way to stop the pawn. You've got to give up your bishop. The rook is just too far away from the promotion square. h3, give the king some luft. b2, take. Knight, rook versus the queen. But 2-on-1. And there's discoordination among the two white pieces. Black is completely winning. King h2, queen c3, attack the pawn. No good way to defend the pawn. By the way, if you played rook a4, there's a very nice tactic here, just to pick up a piece. So here is a 5-second timer. Can you find it? The The winning move is queen c7 check, just picking up the knight. Back to the game. Rook g3 played, take, check, king f7, knight g4, king g7, rook d3, check, and let's get our pawns rolling. Good practice is just to get your pawn that is furthest on the outside rolling. Rather than playing b5, Firouzja goes a5. Knight e3, a4, knight f5, king g6, g4. The first 3 ranks have been exposed. Because of that, Firouzja now wins Tarry's rook in a couple of moves. Throwing a check, Tarry resigned, because wherever the king goes, check, and you pick up the rook. Once again, we have the open Sicilian. Firouzja is taking on Sergey Lobanov, Grandmaster 2516. This was a game, it took place on Title Tuesday on chess.com, bishop g5. One of the most aggressive ways to play against a Sicilian. I love facing this move personally because as a Najdorf player myself, I want sharp positions. And if my opponent plays bishop g5, we are ready to fight. And that's fantastic. Bishop g5, e6, f4, bishop e7. Different from the previous game, Firouzja is setting up with 2 pawns here, and with these 2 pawns, you control all those squares. That's why this setup is really good. And after queen f3, h6, we put a question to the bishop. One normal move is actually just bishop h4, but today, Sergey Lobanov played bishop takes f6, and after take, castle, queen b6 already, I really like Black's position because he is controlling the dark squares. You tend to get this in the Sicilian. Black controls so many dark squares. Now going back here, I just want to show you this really cool opening trap. It's a really, in my opinion, is a very high level trap. Bishop h4 and knight d7. If you've seen my other Sicilian videos, then you tend to hear me say the knights are very well placed when they defend each other. Now, white can castle. g4 is possible as well, which looks really good because white has 3 pawns in the center ready to go g5 to attack. But now, you actually play g5 yourself. This is a high level opening trap in my opinion. Why is it a high level trap? It's because all Black's moves are good, and if white overextends, you just pounce with g5. The point is, if you take, now knight e5 first, attack the queen, it drops back, knight g4, and white's kingside is completely collapsing. If you kick the knight away, take, you attack me, I attack you. Take, 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 and after castle, check. Really, this is a perfect position for Black. So much dark square control. You're going to hear me talk about this octopus knight very soon. So let's go back here. It's a high level opening trap. Today Sergey actually chose to take it, and queen b6. I love Black's position already. Knight drops back. Can't take the knight, the queen is defending it. Bishop d7 first. Now what's the point of that? Because now the knight actually comes to c6. Going back to this position, I want to talk about a key idea here. I believe after bishop deliberately retreating back to e7 to defend this pawn, why did Firouzja do that? I think this was going to happen anyway. Queen here and then here. So Firouzja just beats him to it, retreat it. But after f5, in my opinion, this is a blunder. Because now you go knight c6, put your knight on e5. And later you're going to see me draw the red arrows again. This is an octopus knight. It's a perfect knight, controlling so many squares. Here, I mean, that's an absolute blunder. You can't do that. You cannot surrender control of the central squares. That is a monster knight. It turns out white is the one who gets the octopus in. No, terrible. Knight c6, g3, so then the bishop can come out. Knight e5, hit the queen. This is a perfect knight because no pawn can attack it. Queen drops back, and now rook c8, typical move. Rook on the c file, bishop h3, castle. King in the corner, in my opinion. King a1 does nothing, so I've just given it a question mark. Bishop f6, now the bishop actually comes back, which is really cool actually. It's like Firouzja retreated the bishop, then came back because he wanted maybe Sergey to just overextend. Take, take. Couple of pawns here, perfectly placed because you control all these squares. Perfect octopus knight, controlling every light square. Perfect bishop, perfect rook, and even chances launching your a pawn as well. I absolutely love Black's position. Knight c4, here we go again. Perfect bishop, Sacrificial ideas on b2, launch the pawn. This bishop is perfect, defending against this. You've got a couple of perfect central pawns. I think I've said perfect a few times. The reason I absolutely love this position is because black is in full control. White has no targets in this position. Black is the one dictating the play. And in my opinion, this is a perfect Sicilian Najdorf position. It's an absolute dream position. One reason, to be honest, is because of this piece. White doesn't have his dark squared bishop to contest against black's dark squared bishop. Rook d3, defend the knight. Queen b4, here we go. Sacrificial ideas coming up. Time to launch the pawn up the board. Knight d1, knight e5, hit the rook. Kick the queen away, it drops back, and rook drops back to d2. Now, the big difference between this and the other position is now knight c4. This diagonal is open. Sergei actually retreated his knight to d1. It does defend b2 against the bishop, but now this is a target. The a3 pawn, I mean. Rook takes f6. Giving up the bishop, it was just so strong. By the way, if you played another move like rook d3, we just keep it there. Let's go a5, a4. That's one option. Even knight a3 is an option as well. Knight c4, take. His bishop was so strong, he actually decided to sacrifice the bishop. That's how strong it was. Take, take. Rook d4, and now knight back to a5. Really cool move, because you can't take this because your rook is hanging. Queen d3, Sergei defends rook. Take, take. And rook c1 check was possible, but Firouzja went bishop b5 first to attack the queen. It drops back. Rook c2. I love this move. Really showing the superiority of black's position. Overloading. The queen needs to defend the rook, but rook c2 really highlights the fact that white's position is in disarray. Take, take. Knight c3, bishop in, queen d2. The queen is actually running out of squares. e5 played. One option was actually rook f2, really emphasizing the fact that the queen is running out of options. You take with check, it doesn't matter, it is just a pawn. King f8, the queen has to go back. There's no other spot, and rook f1, you win the queen. But Firouzja did not see that. So going back a few moves, he chose e5. King a2, rook f2, queen drops back, hit the queen again, queen goes to e1, and let's get our pawns rolling. b5. Check, it's just a check, it doesn't matter. King in the corner, bishop sits well in the center, but it's no good. It's not good enough. a5, get the pawns rolling, a4, b4, hit the knight. Rook c1, really stopping white moving. Queen d2, attacking the rook. Looks like the rook has to move. Wrong. So pause the video now. Here is the 5-second timer once again. What can black play now? Just to win on the spot. The winning move is bishop b1 check, and your queen is going to drop next. Check out two other brilliant Firouzja videos over here. One of them is Firouzja beating the Sicilian in style. Another video is Firouzja beating a couple of much lower rated players, showing his class.